Hey, welcome to the BK Show podcast. This is episode number 44, and today I'm joined by my friend Tony Yu. Tony is the co-founder of Vessi Footwear. You can find them at vessi.com, where they make waterproof yet breathable, sustainable shoes that I think are pretty comfortable. My wife is a over collector of them. I have a few pairs myself. Definitely think you should check them out. Tony and his team do some pretty cool things over there in the marketing space that I really wanted to pick his brain on today, but I wanted to hear his backstory as well. So we started at the beginning, but we ended with some marketing tips. Hope you enjoy the show. It's a short one, but I'm just glad I was able to get some of Tony's time for this show. I think you're going to enjoy what you hear today. Let's dive into this conversation with Tony Yu. Tony Yu, welcome to the show, buddy. How you doing?
Good. Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, long time since we connected. We were supposed to do this once before, which turned into a funny conversation an hour later, but I'm glad we're here now, man.
Conjuring up conspiracy theories.
It was good. It was good. I'm glad we made this work. I know you're a busy guy, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but I wanted to lead off with so I'm sure in the intro I told everybody you're the one of the co-founders of Vessi shoes. I wear them, my wife wears them, and you sent out an email last week that allowed people to opt out of Mother's Day emails, and I just wanted to give a little marketing lesson in the front of how amazing that was. My wife told me I had to call you out. I mentioned something last week, and I wanted to make sure I said something on the podcast that it meant the world to her, that you were giving the ability for her to opt out of Mother's Day emails, and what that meant to a ton of women that she's known through the years and groups she's been part of. And so that was really, really cool. And I just, I wanted to thank you for that on her behalf, and then mention that to other people out there who maybe didn't even realize that that was a thing. I know I didn't. When my wife told me, hey, say something to Tony about that, I was like, okay, opt out because you didn't want to get peppered with messages. And then she explained the whole thing to me, and it just kind of blew my mind.
Yeah, that was a great little find through our email team. Just trying to be more thoughtful, connect with our customers a little bit better, and understanding there's very different stories when it comes to Mother's Day, Father's Day, Valentine's even. We have to be a little bit more sensitive in today's age. So
yeah, I would assume I'm not the first person you heard from, I would assume.
No, it was pretty surprising, how many positive messages we got. Apparently no one does these things. So yeah.
Well, for sure my wife thought it was really cool, and so thank you on behalf of Mrs. K. I'm not sure if she's been mentioned on this podcast before. That might be the first time too, so that's pretty cool. Hey, look, I want to talk a little bit about Vessi, obviously, but can you fill us in on your background? I'm not even sure I know your background, Tony. What did you do before Vessi? How did you get into entrepreneurship? I can see on your LinkedIn, and I've talked to you about the nano tips before, the gloves, but I also saw Arcadia Supply in there. I didn't even know anything about other than you mentioned, hey, I have a backpack company. But how did it all get started?
Yeah, I guess out of university, after a bit of traveling, decided go buy a motorcycle, and that motorcycle was the catalyst to the first company I started, which was called Nano Tips. Pretty typical. Ran into a problem myself and solved my own problem. The problem was not being able to use my motorcycle gloves for my touchscreen phone for the GPS and stuff. So tried to figure out how to make these $150 motorcycle gloves work with my phone, and came across no solution. So I ended up making a formula myself. It was almost think of it like a nail polish. You could paint that nail polish onto the glove. It would dry. It would be flexible enough so it would adhere, and then you could use your glove with any type of touchscreen device, so your smartwatch, your iPhones, tablets. And really we stemmed into many different markets and many different applications with this one product, Nano Tips, from skiing, snowboarding, mountain biking, construction workers, over to military, and then prosthetics. So got a good sense of a lot of different industries with that. And with that company, we went a distribution route. So I learned about the whole distribution side of things, production side of things as well. And yeah, that was the first go at a business. It was, successful. And
You didn't have anything as a kid. You weren't, the lemonade stand or paper route or selling baseball cards. There was nothing as a kid. Just you go to college and you're like, yeah, I'm going to create my own formulation that works. So that my gloves can work on a phone. Like that's your first jump into entrepreneurship of any kind.
yeah, well, I think everyone has like their childhood stories growing up, like the different entrepreneurship moments. I guess if we want to go back like that, like we used to. We used to build a lot of things. Me, cousin, and friends, like we would build, potato guns, skateboard ramps, rails, and just do a lot of like crazy things. We would be building like go-karts out of like lawnmowers and racing them around the block. So that was cool. And then we would like sell firecrackers. I think everyone used to sell firecrackers, right?
Is that a thing up there?
Yeah, I mean, firecrackers are illegal up here. We had to like smuggle them from the States, and you get like a brick of Mighty Mites. I forgot how many what brick was. I think it was like 20 little packets. And you'd buy them from the States. I guess it was like 25 or $30, and you could sell each pack for around $10. So decent margins there.
Was it easy to import them as you're a teenager?
Well, we were in elementary school
What?
doing this. Yeah, we got our parents to grab them from the States. I forgot how we would bring them up, and then some people in Canada would have them here, so we would just buy it from them and then just break the packs out and sell them.
What was the punishment if you were caught? Was it worth the squeeze?
Oh yeah, we never thought about the punishment, so never got caught. But at the time, everyone was doing it. So I guess that made it acceptable.
Everyone's doing it.
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
That's amazing. I've never heard of flipping firecrackers. That's a new one for me for sure.
Yeah, firecrackers were very, very, very lucrative.
It sounds like it. Is it still an ongoing hustle for elementary kids?
I don't think so anymore, right? I think the ban got like a little bit more serious. Even fireworks. So I guess like people listening in the States, like we have fireworks and then firecrackers as two different categories. Do you know the difference? Because I still don't know the difference.
I mean, firecrackers go boom. Fireworks. Are you talking like fountains and?
Yeah, they look prettier or something, right?
Yeah.
So we had these things called so firecrackers were always the ones that were like sought after by the kids because they make louder sounds and they make bigger bangs. But when those were like permanently banned, kids migrated to like fireworks, and we would take these things called like screecheroos. Do you know what screecheroos are?
Once you describe them, I probably do.
You like light them up. They're like a little stick. You light them up, and they just like make
spin,
some like
right?
loud sounds, and they spin, right? But if you like stomp on them and like duct tape them, they end up being like we call them like M80s, which are like micro sticks of dynamite, and those were a lot of fun. So we did a lot of those.
Yeah, we used to, and I'm not condoning this by any means, of course, but like we would take 30 sparklers and electrical tape them together as tight as we possibly could, and you'd leave one sticking out the top, and it would sparkle down, and then it pretty much turns into like a tenth of a stick of dynamite when you're done.
Yeah, kids just love. I think it's like cause and reaction. It's like, oh, like how, like I created that bang with my hands, and you feel some sense of like accomplishment there.
It definitely turned into like even bachelor parties around here in my early 20s. We would go buy tannerite, which I don't know if you can get tannerite in Canada or not, but you can get it at your hardware store here. Google tannerite when you're done and watch people blow up cars. It's pretty bananas, and that was like the thing in my 20s. So I think it continues on to when you become a manly man.
Yeah, no, exactly.
That's crazy. So, all right. So away from firecrackers, help me understand, what did you go to college for? Like, how did that lead into you creating your own concoction for gloves?
Yeah. I guess like innovation has been pretty strong. My like since growing up, I grew up around like my dad who invented like a lot of different products, mostly around firearms. So Yeah, he was the first person to invent the smart gun. So it's a mechanical smart gun for the 1911. It was, at the time there was a lot of shootings happening, like in the houses. Kids would pick up their parents' like armed guns, and they would get discharged like accidentally, or cops in a struggle, just like in general, right? So the most popular like law enforcement firearm was the 1911, that type of the model there. So he created a smart gun which only allows the user or the owner of the firearm to fire the weapon. So that was, back in '97. I was, pretty young, and kind of like grew up around like inventing things. Like I remember like inventing a water saving toilet growing up. So there was the problem of like, oh well, we're using too much water in our toilets with a single flush. So we developed this like apparatus thing that would be essentially a switch, a universal switch on your toilet, and you could switch from like a big flush to small flush. And that was very early days.
How much of it was like learning from your dad and being in that culture versus him sitting down and like breaking down principles of how to think about a problem?
Yeah, the principles came probably not in the, principles came from thinking, right? Like he would always offer up like questions as to like, oh, like what would you do in this situation? Like how would you think about it? Like this. And just that way of questioning would get us to think from a very like first principles point of view, right? Like, because you don't have any like preconceived understanding of like how to get to that objective. So you, as a kid, you like think of like all these like very obscure ways to get there. And, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But you can, then you can apply your mind and go and fix it. In that sense, yeah, I imagine it's like our brains being very similar to like a computer, right? Whereas like a supercomputer can run like many different like operations a second, and if you put in kind of like the goal, it can run, I don't know, like 1,000 different ways to get to that goal in like, I don't know how quick they can go down, but let's call it like half a second. But if you grow up like constantly thinking about all these ways to get to that objective without actually having the solution, like your mind is constantly just creating like different like neural pathways to get better. So I don't know if that's too much of a tangent, but
I think it makes a lot of sense as to like, when you jump into a conversation and you're like, I was riding my motorcycle, I couldn't touch my phone, I figured why not, I'll go home and like do the figure out a chemical reaction and build some sort of compound. It didn't make a lot of sense, right? How did you get there? But like that makes a ton of sense if your father was an inventor, which I think the smart gun's a pretty big deal, right? And so I don't know what else he invented, but that's amazing. I imagine growing up in that really, it helps me understand you, right? I know you decently well. I've met you at a few different masterminds and hung out with you, and so it really helps me understand why you think the way you think now that I don't think I had a grasp on before.
Even with like the with like the nanotip solution, it was really just figuring out like how capacitive touchscreens functioned. So you start with the question, and then you figure out how capacitive touchscreen works. So then Google has a bunch of resources for you, and then you can dive into like the patents. So you can start looking up the patents, and the patents will have like very detailed explanation as to how they work. And then you can figure out the next question to ask. And work backwards. So it's like what works well with capacitive touchscreen devices, and you get a couple compounds or materials that work, and then you figure out like, oh, well, how do I combine them? Who knows how to combine them? And you just kind of go down that thoughtful like questioning loop, and you end up at a at a product, I guess.
So is nanotip something you still own, and I would assume you have a patent on?
Yeah, it's not functioning anymore. A lot of the time has now gone into Vessi, so that's 95% of my time now. So
It just seems like a no-brainer product, right? That I assume the margins are decent on, and so many different applications that, I would assume it kind of works in the background for you.
yeah, although at the time, like we didn't understand how to, hire and just get people to run it, like operate it. So that company is essentially on pause or defunct now, but it's still around. Yeah.
Well, if it's for sale, hit me up afterwards. That sounds awesome.
Cool.
What about the other one, man? How did our Arcadia get started? So again, I've heard you mention briefly, I've got a backpack company on the side, but I know how much time Vessi takes for you. I know the explosive growth you guys have had over there. So I would imagine this doesn't get as much love as it needs either, but how did it get started? What's it up to now?
Yeah. The like nanotips really kick-started our like understanding of like marketing. So we launched that product on Kickstarter when Kickstarter was just launched in Canada, and then we launched like subsequent products within nanotips and like some other companies like in between through Kickstarter. It got us a good flavor of like how to use the platform and how to kickstart a company just from like no money. Like you can launch a company with like $5,000 or even less. I think with nanotips we launched it with like 2,000, and we were doing at the peak was mid six figures. And yeah, it's like you don't need any type of like initial investment to get going. So we were traveling during kind of like a down period of nanotips. By me, I mean my girlfriend Michaela and I, who I now work on Vessi with as well. And we had a problem with these backpacks. Like we couldn't bring like a day pack around, but also like we were trying to pack really light because we're backpacking around Asia and also like going camping and stuff. So hit up some manufacturers in Asia at the time and came across some like very interesting type of like packable bags. So we took that, like retooled it, refined it so it was purposely made for us, and then we launched it on Kickstarter. Same thing. So I think that company, we launched it with like $5,000, and we did, I don't know, like 600,000 with it, and then turned that into like a regular D2C company. Took the ads that were working for our crowdfunding and then just like kept on growing that company. Launched subsequent products through Kickstarter, and then a bunch of friends like started hitting us up, asking if we could help them launch their companies. So from that, like we spun off another marketing agency, and helped help people launch their companies through crowdfunding. And that was it's probably in 2017.
Well, I knew that Vessi had a huge Kickstarter, right? What type of and I'd love to hear how you pulled that off when we get there. But like how much did you raise for nanotips and for the backpack company Arcadia on Kickstarter?
I think in total we've done a little over $10 million through crowdfunding, like just us alone, and like with all the companies that we've helped launch. And yeah, I mean, Kickstarter it's just a great platform to like launch a product very low cost. You can have a sample ready or a couple of samples, and launch on the platform with like $5,000 or less. So really all you need is like the sample, the videos, and a bit of like an email collection sequence, and then you throw it up on the website. You hit up the right like marketing agencies, and off to the races.
So you've done 10 million. That includes all the companies like through your marketing agency.
Yeah.
Are you still doing that?
I'm not. Yeah, although I would like to at some point, like get back to that. Yeah, we don't have nearly enough time to be doing that. So
Out of pure curiosity, how did you structure that? Was it like a retainer, a monthly retainer to help them with their Kickstarter, or I'm salivating just saying it, a royalty deal on top of what you could pull off there?
yeah, it was a success based fee, which at the time was kind of a bad model because our friends were hitting us up asking if we could help them do this, but they didn't have any money, so like we fronted the cost for the marketing, for the video. We put in all the work, and then it was based off of our success. The amount of time that we put in, like we could have just launched our own companies, because the same amount of time. But we would, take a percentage of the overall campaign generated, and that was that. We did want to structure it like more like an accelerator, so that it would be a bit of like an equity. It would be like part equity, part success based fee, and then we would help them scale the company post Kickstarter as well.
But did you ever get that into action? Because that sounds like exactly what I would have done there.
Sort of. Then Q at Vessi. Vessi came along. Andy, my co-founder here, I had met him at the gym, and that he had a product at the time that was a new type of shoe. It was a new material that he had invented and developed. It was fully waterproof and it was knit. So if you think about like the Roshis, it's really comfortable, stretchy, breathable. But the fact that he could make it into a fully waterproof knit shoe was didn't exist before, right? So it's like, well, I want to launch this, get proof of market, proof of concept, and then see what we can do with that after. And Michaela and I, we jumped on that project, helped really structure, from the brand market positioning, the initial launch, and we launched that campaign in 2018, and that was pretty successful. I think, we launched it with like a little under 20,000, and I think by the end of the campaign, we did like 1.2 million.
That's amazing. So you're kind of running this agency, and Andy comes to you as far as like, hey, I kind of want to do the same thing, and that's how you guys came together.
Yeah, it was exactly like that.
From your point of view, were you just like blown away by the idea of the knit and waterproof? I know when you explained it to me, I was like, wait a minute, what? Like, how is this, breathable and yet waterproof at the same time?
Yeah, I was blown away with the potential of the idea. It was unlike anything I've seen, and craziest part is like when you actually put on the shoe, it's unlike anything you've ever worn. You have like, you can't even fathom like why it's waterproof. It just there's a mental dissociation between that. So.
Well, I want to hop in. I want to hop in there and like understand that too, because like you guys, sustainable, waterproof, vegan, breathable, all of those individually. Like there's a how behind there. But can you just touch on the Kickstarter? Like I've actually seen you present on some of this stuff before, and I know you could talk for hours on exactly how you pull it off. But what are like 3 to 5 key things that people aren't thinking of when they're doing a Kickstarter? I know you mentioned earlier, getting good photos, getting a video done, some sort of email collection, but just after talking to you and Michaela, I know there's a bit more to that process, and $1.2 million is incredible, right? And that's not all marketing. That's having a good product behind that. But what tips can you give to people thinking about doing a Kickstarter?
Yeah, I think it's the clarity and market positioning. Like, how do you convey the problem that you're trying to solve? It's just, really it's a good pitch, right? And then you need to have a good offer on there. So just think about like what is the core thing your problem or your product will solve? Like, what is the core problem? Just make that like front and center, and then go through like kind of your objections list as to like, well, Like, why would someone not want to buy your product and have that like linearly laid out on your campaign? So it's, really good pitch. And then there's like the ins and outs of like Kickstarter, different email lists. At the time you're doing like cross promotions. That's like internal promotions within other Kickstarter campaigns. The right agencies to work with, newsletters.
I think that would be my two questions would be like, who was the who that you initially targeted with this? Like, whose problem were you solving? And then how did you get word beyond, or was doing it on Kickstarter enough? Or how did you get word beyond Kickstarter to get PR out there so that people are coming back and saying, I want to get on this Kickstarter?
Yeah, I mean, PR is important too. Although, like, if you don't have the right product, like PR typically doesn't cover crowdfunding campaigns anymore, so that might be out. Kickstarter itself, it as its own platform, like has a lot of the early adopter mentality. So, those are the types of people that you want to hit up. So your page should be crafted towards that specific type of mindset, the Kickstarter audience.
Was there I don't want to say demographic, but the who for you? I know you target a few different audiences now. Was there one that stood out in the beginning of like, here's the problem we want to solve? Was it, was it solving a problem you had while traveling? What was the specific like pain point or story you were able to tell?
Yeah, it was like we none of us liked boots. None of us liked wearing boots. And we wanted like a casual everyday sneaker that was truly everyday. We live in Vancouver, and even though it's sunny one day, like in that same day it could rain and snow. So how do you ever like prepare for the weather? It's kind of impossible. So ours was very focused around like the waterproof aspect, but the styling of the sneaker to make it a very casual athleisure look.
They look sweet. They're, like you said, they're hard to believe that they're breathable and waterproof and comfortable, right? Like they're a weird mixture of all the three. But I want to understand, like, how is that possible? How is a shoe breathable and waterproof?
Yeah, it's the material composition, right? So on the surface layer, it's a knit material, and then we have a very, very stretchy membrane underneath, extremely thin, that allows for the breathability. So it's a specific type of like grade of waterproofing as well, which allows the moisture molecules to escape, because they're smaller, but the water molecules not to be able to penetrate. So it's impermeable to water, and to like moisture, it's permeable. But how do you make that like stretchy enough and durable enough and put it in a shoe? That was a difficult process.
So what did Andy come up with in the beginning? Like that, what you just described right there, being able to put
that was it. Yeah, that was the entire material. Yeah, the entire construction of the shoe, the material itself. Like waterproof exists already, but a lot of us are just familiar with like the waterproof type of boots, like very hard construction. They feel waterproof, right? But this feels like more comfortable than your like knit sneakers, like your Adidas NMDs. It's like, but at the same time, like, yeah, fully waterproof and breathable.
But what did he have when he came to you? Did he have a shoe? Did he have a prototype, or was it just that material? And like, who brought the cool? Because your shoes are cool, man. They all look fantastic. Like, who brought the it factor to the brand?
Yeah, Andy, for sure, right? Andy is he's the shoe guy. So he had the material, he had the prototype of the shoe. Although the shoe at the time was very far and very different from what it looked like today. The initial prototype was there.
Yeah, and I think I even have I think I met you in early 2019, I want to say, or maybe even late 2018, and I got a pair from you way back then, and they're very different now. Like my wife has far too many pairs here, if I'm honest, Tony, and they're different. Like the newer ones are much different than the older ones, and they just continue to get cooler and cooler. Hey, what is the vegan part of it? I remember you mentioning it a long time ago. I saw it on your website. Help me understand the vegan side of it.
Yeah, I think just going back a bit, like I think the cool thing about like the knit technology and this wave of knit manufacturing is that it was pretty sustainable in the way that we could produce things. Yeah, less material waste, because traditionally how sneakers were made was like if you imagine kind of like a square piece of fabric and a little bit of like a horseshoe cookie cutter, you put that cookie cutter over the material, and all the excess that was around the cookie cutter, like it gets tossed away. So you're wasting about like 30 to 40% of that material, and that ended up in the landfill. With knitting technology, you really only create what you need. So think of a machine that just like knits exactly the dimensions that you need. So you don't have any like additional waste. But you can go one step further with this whole vegan aspect, is like you don't use any type of leather products or animal byproducts, especially like in the glue. And that to us like was one step further in the sustainability aspect, because now we're not having to use like live animals or like dead animals, and the amount of like land waste associated with producing leather hide is just, it's more land consumption, it's more like CO2 emitted, it's just more in the production process, more water waste that comes up from that. So yeah, very conscious decision not to use any type of animal byproducts very early days. Keep it like more sustainable in terms of like those aspects. And with materials in the future, like how can we, we're thinking about like how we can make a vegan type of leather, but make it actually feel and look better than like traditional leather.
Is there anything close on the marketplace at this time?
There are some. Tesla's got a great like type of like polyurethane seat, but yeah, I mean there's a lot of innovation, like plant-based leathers. There's like pineapple leather, that's pretty cool. So they use like the rinds of the pineapples and they like compress them together, and it's very durable type of innovation there. So yeah, constantly thinking about like material innovation, how we can make existing materials just generally better and perform better than the regular ones.
Does this go like further up the chain? Like I know you have vertically integrated quite a bit in your company. Like I think you guys own your manufacturer overseas as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
How far does that sustainability go up chain for you guys?
Yeah, we're pretty thoughtful in like what we add into our pipeline. There's this whole movement of like people using like ocean waste plastic integrated into the materials, and because we are so tied to our supply chain, we understand that even like there's only so much like ocean waste plastic that you can actually collect that's viable before the cost goes up, right? So you have to get it from kind of like the shores. And when people push like that sustainability aspect a little too far, like what ends up happening is like maybe like if you go further up the chain, like people are actually just dumping things in the water and just recollecting them to get that seal of approval. And that's the things that we don't want. So yeah, really before we introduce any type of like that type of material, like we need to vet the entire chain and make sure it's coming from the right place, right manufacturers, down to like the raw components that matter.
So are you doing anything on the I guess the front end? Would that be, or like are you doing something if you sell X amount of shoes or planting a tree or anything? Are you doing anything on the front end as far as like sustainability or carbon offsets or anything like that?
So we have some carbon offsets like on our website, but that's pretty simple. But what we like to do is we're like pretty community focused. So we spin up like our own community funds, and with a portion of your purchase, like we put it in our community fund, and we enable these dollars to go to work by enabling Ben yourself to like do something within your own community. So during COVID, we had people coming up with like all sorts of different projects. One person set up a grocery delivery network over in New York. So we gave her a bit of money, and it was the entire like volunteer network that she spun up that was helping the immunocompromised get groceries. So her volunteer network would pick up groceries and drop it off at the immunocompromised houses, and the fund that they created would reimburse that volunteer. So it's like more thoughtful type of community initiatives that we want to push forward there.
Didn't you do something like amazing around nurses during COVID as well? Didn't you like give away a bunch of shoes?
Yeah, we gave away a little over 2,000 pairs of shoes to frontline workers. And then like with the profits from some of the sales there, we were able to buy and donate an additional like 420,000 surgical masks as well.
Yeah, I remember I did a little presentation in the beginning of COVID for this like e-commerce virtual meetup thing, and I pulled your stuff. People were asking for like, how do we market during this? And it was before really, kind of COVID gave everyone a boost in e-commerce. And I used you as an example. I was like, this is the right way to do it. Like give away shoes and sell pairs and donate masks. Like, I think there was too many people out there being gross, and using pretty bad messaging. And I think you guys were doing it the right way. And, shout out to you guys for always looking for the right angle. I don't know. Your guys' marketing is always on point.
Nice. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's we're trying to be more thoughtful, and instead of just giving money to an organization, we try and figure out like how we could put our dollars to work within our own local communities, because we feel like by enabling a person or people around us to do better things like that, you kind of create that like ripple effect of good karma that gets passed along even quicker.
I want to jump ahead. Like you guys are crushing, right? You said 1.2 million on your Kickstarter. That was 2018. I know you guys are doing really well. You don't have to share your numbers on here, but you guys are doing extremely well, and that's going to come with a ton of headaches, right? And so, like, before I touch on like your storytelling and your messaging, I'd love to know, like, what has kept you up over the last couple of years? What are things that you've had to solve growing this fast that maybe many business owners aren't thinking about?
I think it's like internal structure, like going from a startup to growth stage. In a startup, everyone's doing everything, and it's very fluid, and you have a small team, and so it's the synergy is good. But when you need to start adding more and more people, that's when things get a little more complicated. Like you need very specific like role clarity, job descriptions, and how that communication works becomes different than a startup as well. So I think it's like internal structure and hiring the right people for the right seats.
Where did you go about learning all that, right? Because I met you again towards the beginning of this. You were already doing well, and you've come a long way in a short period of time, right? The explosive growth. Where were you able to learn about leadership and who you needed to be and getting people in the right seats, and like where were you able to learn all the things that you needed to do in order to hold the reins this whole time?
Yeah, I honestly think it's like talking to a lot of people, but at the same time like trying, but really it's like learning from other people's experiences and trying to get them on board. The guys that come with the playbooks are probably pretty important at the stage of our company. So looking for more of those people to join Vessi's growth. but I wouldn't say like I'm like anywhere where I need to be for that level of growth right now. So trying to learn as quickly as possible.
It's not a secret. I don't think we're all just winging it, man. Like we're all just trying to figure it out as we go. But like I've been impressed watching you from the side, and I'm sure that feels super comfortable. Of, me talking you up on a podcast. But like it's been fun to watch like your growth over the last couple of years. And I've seen you, at one event, and then I didn't see you for 9 months or a year or something. I saw you at another one, right? And then I came to Vancouver pre-COVID and was able to see an upgrade. And I think you've moved since then with your team. So it's been fun to watch. But I'm always open to learning too. Like, is he consuming books I should be consuming? Does he follow certain people? Are you bringing in consultants? Are you just hiring people who have been there, done that, and bringing them into Vessi? And I'm trying to level up at the same time, trying to figure out how watching you and figure out how you're doing it and where I can fill in some gaps.
Yeah, advisors, just trying to get like a good network of friends who have been there, done that, experienced like similar problems. Really important. There's a cool book called it's called the High Growth Handbook. A friend recommended it to me. It's online. You can just go and check it out. It's by like Elad Gil, I think his name is Elad Gil. I think he invested in like 15 unicorns, but it's really just like a playbook on how to run a company. It's like an operating manual. It's very dry read.
Is it good though? Worth getting?
Yeah, like it's online. It's free.
I'm more of a listener. Hopefully, I can get it on Audible. It sounds good. Look, I saw you at e-commerce field. You presented on some messaging and storytelling. Actually, I think it went. It was like 2 weeks before that I heard you talk about it. We sat down, we had dinner at a steakhouse, and you were like trying to pound this into my head. And I was still very tactical back then of like, SEO and how we're running ads and different things we're doing inside the ads and stuff like that. And you kept trying to pull me back out, and you're like, yeah, but what's your message? What's the story you're trying to tell? Who are you targeting? And specifically at ECF, you talked about how you were almost, jumping into these nurses circles and jumping into these dog walking circles. And so like, I would love for you to like just explain to me your thought process behind the messaging in your brand, and like how do you actually like, where are you testing the messaging to know it works? You talked to me about a ton of stuff at the steakhouse that night, and if I can get you to share even a quarter of it, I think this audience is gonna be blown away.
Yeah, start off by like just laser focus into like customer needs and how they're talking about you. I think one of the most interesting tests is to see how your brand shows up, or how your brand shows up like in really a game of telephone. So if you told one person what your brand does or like what you're doing, and by the 10th person, like does it come to you in the same essence? And if it does, you have pretty strong messaging. To dial that in, that's that part is a bit difficult. So it needs to be simple enough for it to get like passed along to like 10 people and still remain consistent. Listening to like different audience groups, like I'll use Vessi as an example. Is like we started off as like a very like athleisure lifestyle type of shoe for the rain, but what we eventually found out was that everyone was using the shoes for nursing. So a lot of nurses, a lot of doctors using our product because they didn't want blood and IV drips and urine and feces on their shoes, and like never crossed my mind to find that as a use case. Another one was like dogs, like a dog community, pet owners. No pet owner likes to take their dog out when it's raining, but your dog's got to go out. Your dog wants to play in the mud. Sometimes you got to take them there. So our product found like a very nice niche within that category as well. And a lot of like really other like obscure ones. Rowing community was quite big, and in every niche, like we found our utility provided a bit of a wedge into the market. So it had like utility aspect, but at the same time it had the the comfort to keep people there, and the community to tie them back to the brand. So a bit of our marketing strategy is like finding these like niche pockets, finding the key opinion leaders, I guess like the head of that social cluster, and making that person like our ambassador. Getting them into our shoes, allowing them to like gift to their own social network, and creating like a bit of a saturation effect within small social clusters. We found for our product specifically, because it is a visual shareable type of product, the tipping point within every social cluster was about 30%. And when we got at least 30% or more of that social cluster wearing our product, like it had a spillover effect. So that's kind of what we're aiming for. So you can go after like smaller dog walking groups, nurse communities, rowing communities, frisbee golf, and just kind of go through and saturate each pocket. But the frisbee golf people, they don't just play in frisbee golf. They're like worldly people. So they'll transcend, and eventually, if you reach enough of those pockets, like they merge to become 30% of like Vancouver, for example.
I have some questions on this cluster. Like, number one, how much of that is seeding? Like how much seeding of product are you doing to get into these clusters?
Not many, to be honest. I think you just have to be like laser focused with your approach, and you can talk to your own customers and see, like, have them point the direction for you a lot of times. So, you identify your key influencers within your own current demo already, like your early adopters, and you empower them to go and find the next ones, because they're going to have a more targeted approach than even Facebook.
So how are you empowering them?
Yeah, it's like you can give them products to give away to certain people, and they feel empowered to share with their closest cluster mates, I guess you could call
And then
them.
you're saying 30% is the tipping point. How are you tracking that on your end, as far as like, all right, we seeded to the top influencers, they've convinced the next tier of people. How are you determining when you've reached critical mass?
That part's been hard. I don't think we have an exact lockdown on that, but surveys, really. You can survey your community, but for at least like on a smaller level, you could see the percentage of people that have used that code within that specific community. So you can track it via codes. So hospital network, for example, you could have a specific hospital key code for that, and you could see how well that is trending.
All right, let's get really great. I want to understand this, Grant. All right, so like, in America, there's like the Mayo Health system that's around here in the Twin Cities, right? So how are you identifying who is the major influencer and the nurses in the Mayo Health system? Help me understand the beginning of that process. Like, how does that search begin?
So the nurses within which?
So I would assume you're targeting. Are you targeting individual hospitals in big cities? Are you targeting like health systems? Like again, around here, there's like the Mayo Health system, right? Which is Minnesota and Western Wisconsin, maybe even Iowa. So are you trying to target a whole system and find the influencers in that whole system, or how are you beginning that journey into trying to take over the nurse crowd in Minnesota?
I'm not sure if we have a market in Minnesota right now, but what we would do there is.
But even in Vancouver, like a market you've used before, walk me through a market you've used before. I'm just trying to understand how you're identifying the creme de la creme of the people in that target. Like
in our hospital community network, like the ERs, the ER doctors, like are kind of like they're like the superstars, right? So if you find any one of those ones, like on through social. Social is probably the best way to like reach out to them, and having some type of influence there, like you can try and populate it within their own hospital community network.
And so once you've found the superstar, right, I would assume you're seeding them and then passing a code on that way, and that's how you're trying to track how many people you've reached through that network.
Yeah, and you're trying to find like similar profiles within that region to try and get a bit of overlap within that one superstar. So you figure out like what YouTube channels they're watching as well, what type of podcasts they're listening to. You can get that all from that same type of the same influencer as well. You can build like lookalikes just by hopping through like the different Instagram channels. And yeah, you try and like find that one influencer. You find all the things that like kind of around them. You populate those areas as well, and you track the code.
So are you using Facebook and Instagram to put the interest that superstar has into an audience and run ads that way? Or are you actually going out to, once you've like network with the superstar and actually going out to the podcast they listen to and the things they read online and advertise there? Or are you using Facebook strictly for that?
We use like Instagram whitelisting. And that's been a good one. So if we're finding like a key macro influencer, we'll try and find like key micro influencers like surrounding that person, and then we'll whitelist those micro influencers and pull the right content around that specific community and run ads back to their network.
Well, some of the stuff you do is super interesting in the way you do marketing. And again, I wish I had you on here longer so I could like really deep dive into it, because I'm still a little confused on how you pull off some of the things you're doing. Your presentation, if you guys are in ECF, check into e-commerce fuel and see if they may or may not have your presentation in there. I'm not sure if Andrew does or not, but the one that you did in San Antonio right before COVID was a bigger deep dive into this, and it was incredible. So you are huge in Vancouver, right? For good reason. It's wet there, and people probably want to wear your shoes. But that's led to pop-up stores. Can you talk a little bit about the success you've had having pop-up stores in Vancouver?
I guess it goes back to like listening to the customers and what they wanted. So like coming out of Kickstarter, we were people didn't like believe that it was actually waterproof. So we decided to throw a little pop-up store, also like a celebration launch, like that we were starting to ship. And, we opened up a little store, build out like a water station for people to try on the shoes and jump in some puddles, really craft out that experience. And, had a bit of stock, but opened around like 4 p.m. and sold out around like 5 when the store opened. So, yeah, that was interesting to see.
But that has to make like the easiest marketing of all, right? Your shoes are waterproof. I've seen, as soon as I met you, I started following you on social. And so people buy from you and they immediately want to run these things underwater, right? And of course they're going to film it and they're going to put it on their Instagram or put it on their Facebook. They're going to go jump in a puddle. I've seen a lot of your like marketing done for you. Like your user generated content must be through the roof on like a per pair basis.
Yeah, always lots of UGC coming through. And then we can recycle that content and drive it back as ads.
I know you're a big fan of Elon Musk, right? So I came to your offices and I think I took a picture of you with his flamethrower. And one of the questions I was going to ask you last week, but I'll ask you right now, is Bitcoin on your balance sheet too? Does Vessi have Bitcoin on their balance sheet? Is that something we should make public right now?
Yeah, no Bitcoin on the balance sheet just yet. Pushing for it though.
Well, I know you're a big fan. So, like, are you exploring anything, into cryptocurrencies or NFTs? Like, somebody in e-commerce fuel had mentioned that they had made their clothing an NFT, right? So that they could take that into the metaverse. Is that something you guys have even explored at Vessi as far as, minting an NFT along each pair of shoes so the customers can wear them in their virtual worlds as well?
Yeah, something we're exploring. I think there's like some pretty cool aspects around NFTs in general. Like the first prototype or the first sketch of the Vessi shoes being like, how would you say, like NFT'd. I think that could be pretty interesting, and just have that value grow as the company grows. Could be pretty cool to see. Shoes, yeah, having like redeemable NFT tokens for shoes specifically.
I think there's a lot you could do with smart contracts too. Like not only just being able to like, look, I think it'd be cool to have their Vessis be an NFT that they could take into virtual worlds and wear like a skin, right? Like a shoe skin from Vessi. But I think you could do a lot of smart contract stuff too. I know you guys have a giant community of people who are fanatical about your brand, as they should be. And I think you could offer some experiences or meet and greet the founders or Vessis for life. I think there's a lot of smart contracts you could put on top of these with every shoes pair that you sell, or like, you know, every 1 in a million, right? I think there's a way that you could offer more to your community via NFTs.
Yeah. Wonder what that education process would look like.
I'll have to send it to you after the call. There's a good thread in ECF of somebody trying to figure this out, right? And trying to sell. I think they just minted their first NFTs that are going to be sold on Shopify, which is a process in itself, right? And understanding, you know, how to put it on a blockchain, how to mint it in the first place. Do you host it somewhere else? I think there's a whole lot to solve there, but I do feel like that's where we're going in the future is how can we utilize clothing and shoes and watches and anything else that you might want to bring into the metaverse as a skin, and then also like layer on smart contracts on there to almost like reinvent the giveaway process, I guess, or really add some cool things onto physical items that you're purchasing.
Mm-hmm.
Are you into any of that at all? Are you buying any NFTs right now? I know you got some sick artwork behind you here on video.
Am I buying any NFTs? No, I'm not. But you know, keeping a close eye on like that, how that market's playing out.
Well, look, I know you got to run. I appreciate having you on. I want everyone to go buy Vessis. Obviously, they can go to Vessi.com. I'll put that in the show notes. But if anybody wanted to reach out to you, what's a good way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, follow me on social, Tony AYOO.
Well, your company's cool. I definitely want to talk to you about nanotips if you're just going to let that thing die. But Vessi's cool. Opportunity to meet your girlfriend too, she's an absolute rock star. So if you send me Michaela's stuff, I'll tell people to follow her too. What you guys are doing over there is amazing. Like if you guys just want to learn how to do marketing in a good way, go follow Vessi and just get pixeled, get on their email list and watch what they're doing because it's impressive, man. I really appreciate you coming on.
Cool. Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Big thanks to Tony for coming on the show. I will put his social media handles in the show notes as well as Vessi.com. Head there, grab a pair of shoes, see what you think of his sneakers that are waterproof and breathable. I think they're pretty kick-ass. I really like where his company's going, and it's been fun watching them from the sidelines. So definitely go check out Vessi.com and see what Tony and Andy and Michaela are up to. I will be back in a couple weeks with a conversation with Ezra Firestone. See you then.